Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome back. We're excited to have Dan Ahrens back on, portfolio manager of our cannabis ETFs, as well as some of our themes like vices, restaurants, and hotels. Excited to sit down and chat. But of course, just a good reminder, we want you to join the conversation too. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Or, even if you have a comment, if you want to just throw out, say hi, if you want to say something, say how you're feeling, you're welcome to do that as well. But we'll be taking those kind of as we go. Dan, how are you doing? I know you've been busy. You got back from Benzinga. Right. You got a little bit of a beat, but then you're fully back in it.
Yes, how you doing? A little bit of a beat. What?
A little bit of a relaxing time. You had
a weekend.
You weren't in
I
California.
Wouldn't call going to Florida for the Benzinga conference relaxing per se, but I did miss last week's Nooner. So happy to be back on with everybody.
Yes.
We are echoing a little bit. Is that because of you,
it's starting? It could be because of me. All right, let me try this. I'll do this. All right.
But,
but yeah.
Happy to be here. Zing, and I'm sporting the gear.
The new stuff, which is good. I think I just did a load of laundry with mine in it. So next week, next week you'll be gone. That's a good reminder. Next week you'll be out. So
I will be.
We got to get in all the good insight and information right here. Also, hey Jane, welcome back. Glad to see you.
And I am wearing, I want to point out, I'm wearing a non-publicly traded company on my head here. And I told Brady Cobb, this is the only non-public cannabis company I will wear because I appreciate the work that Brady does, fighting the good fight in Florida, does a lot of work in Washington. And so we like Sunburn Cannabis. So
it was great seeing him in Florida as well, I guess in general. And I guess the day after we all left and after Benzinga was done, they just opened a new location. So lots going on. I know they had a fun 420 setup where they were doing a lot of sort of a big event for it, which is also great. But yeah, very excited for Florida. We'll see that coming along. I haven't seen any new polls about, voting or sentiment or anything, but so I think it's unchanged for now. I know, again, it's a harder kind of bar to clear, but we'll have to see as we go.
Yeah, that's only going to get hotter and heavier, and the wording, the battles. When we're down in Florida, somebody told me they heard a radio ad on iHeartRadio that was anti-cannabis and vote it down, and I was like, really? Radio advertising? So good reminder to anybody that is in Florida, anybody that knows anybody in Florida. Vote early and vote often. No,
that's not true.
That's only vote once, please.
True.
But no, it's not going to be an easy vote. It's not a lay down by any means. Everybody needs to get out and vote so that the actual public sentiment numbers might be reflected, because you don't want the anti-cannabis prohibitionist nut jobs to get out the vote better than normal people.
Yes, that is true. So it's a good reminder, don't let your foot off the gas, which I think is true kind of across the board, especially in Florida. But luckily, I think we have sort of that group headed by the team at True Leaf over there, trying to work hard to get the message out. So that is good at least. But yeah, definitely a good reminder, which I don't think anybody is really thinking, it's a done deal. Well,
yeah.
I think people are thinking that it's close, but not quite. There's still descendants out there.
We can't understate the great job that Kim Rivers and the whole True Leaf team did in spearheading the initial to get it on the ballot with the campaign to get it on there. But now that it's on the ballot, I had I sat down with Air. We talked to Brady. A lot of the companies with their Florida exposure are really, really coming together, and teamwork makes the dream work. For something as valuable as adult use in Florida, you set aside the competition, and everybody is pulling in the same direction because it's huge for everybody with Florida exposure.
Yeah,
and some other people that don't have Florida exposure, I probably think they're going to be buying into Florida exposure, and that remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's true. But again, there are other states. Well, I guess I'm mainly thinking about Pennsylvania that you could have a footprint in, that you're focused on there, getting that through and done. Again, I'm very, very excited for that personally. But yeah, I think once Florida opens up,
big, and Ohio's big.
Ohio was big too. Yeah, we're not even there yet with Ohio, I guess, technically, which is wild. You have to think about. Also, hey, how's it
Yep.
going, Noah and Stevie? Great to see you guys.
Wow. Hi, Noah.
Everyone's here. It's great.
And Stevie, of
All right.
course.
Well, then, speaking a little bit about cannabis, well, or actually, kind of the market in general. I feel like we're in the thick of earnings in general. A lot of stuff is coming through. Definitely interested in seeing Visa. I know they're coming out soon. Just kind of seeing consumer sentiment generally, but I know beyond that, we have cannabis earnings coming up. Some of the major players, mostly kind of in that early May timeframe. Any expectations, thoughts? Just I know again we're somewhat far out, but kind of coming up
Well,
to
I
earnings.
actually love this period of time because we get the Q4 earnings followed closely by Q1 earnings. That they're only about 2 months apart, which is a lovely time as long as earnings are good. And there was a lot of muted expectations about Q4, and lo and behold, GTI comes out with great earnings. Truly comes out with great earnings and interesting, tax announcements.
Yes.
Um, there are a lot of strong earnings, is all I'm saying in Q4. After again muted expectations. Now Q1, everybody remember it doesn't include 420 day. We'll have to talk about that next, but Q1, we do have some additional locations starting to mix in, and expect strong numbers out of Maryland, out of New Jersey. So I'm expecting Q1 earnings to look pretty good. Now we always have to say that doesn't matter as much as anything happening with rescheduling, safer. All the
Chuck
various
Schumer's.
things. Yeah, Chuck Schumer's tweets.
Yeah,
Hey, well, we'll have to come back and talk about 420.
we will.
That we
Yeah.
had Joe Biden tweet,
And
Kamala
Kamala.
tweet, or at least their handlers tweeted. We know that they don't actually know how to tweet. Uh,
Still
but
coming from their official accounts and still it was
yeah, yeah,
interesting going through the comments though as well. I think a lot of the sentiment seemed to be like, all right, finally, and or you've been not getting in the way of this, but I think especially for the VP, a little bit more like you were kind of part of this. I know definitely Biden had his own hand kind of in the history of it, but
yep,
hopefully that puts extra pressure. And I think most of what I don't think I saw, and again, maybe I didn't get too deep in the comments, anything that was like, this doesn't make sense, we don't want this, or anything that seemed negative against it, which might have been just the 420 vibes of everyone feeling good and who knows. But it was a
yeah. So,
beautiful day out.
quick reminder to everybody: public sentiment is at an all-time high right now to get things done. We have a lot of politicians saying a lot of things, and reminder to everybody: one, keep the pressure up, keep reminding all the, again, it's two very different things. Congress people don't know anything about rescheduling. It's not in their sandbox. If you call your senator's office or House representative, congressperson, they don't know anything about rescheduling. They don't care.
Yep.
But safe/safer is working its way through yet again. So keep up the pressure. Again, the White House and that branch of government working on rescheduling is different than our elected officials in Congress. Keep up the pressure, but be nice, everybody. That's what I'm saying. Don't yell um, at the politicians, even though they deserve it.
Okay.
Don't be a jerk. Don't be rude.
Yes.
But keep the pressure up in a nice, reminding way.
Yes,
Don't be
it'll
a
be more
dick.
productive that way. Ultimately, I think to push things ahead. And I don't know what that case was recently with someone who was threatening their politicians. Definitely don't threaten your politicians. I don't think that's new news, but yeah, I think just sort of being that reminding voice of, hey, people really want this. This is how it's helping people. This is how it's creating jobs. This is how it's benefiting kind of safety for consumption for people who are using it.
Yep.
Because you're not getting it from the illicit market where you don't know what's in there. I know, again, when at Benzinga, everyone had left, I think, but Kim was talking about in Tallahassee, I think like 9 people died in a month from having fentanyl laced
Uh-huh.
cannabis. So all that stuff, I think people know,
Yeah.
but it's that continuous reminder to kind of get it going. Also, that does remind me for safe. I wonder, I have a second frame for this. We could do 2 competing ones. We could have a safer one and a DEA breaking case of glass. 2 reasons to celebrate, potentially.
Do
Let me
it.
think about that a little bit more. All right, fair enough.
Hey, when in doubt, make
Do it.
make a frame with a couple pre-rolls or joints in it or something. You know, why not?
I gotta hit the store after this, so maybe we'll do that. Get it going. All
Do
right,
it.
questions coming in. I know we'll talk about 420 itself specifically, but sort of just talking cannabis a little bit. From Chris, have you heard anything about DEA proposing new rules to clarify that manufactured cannabinoids like Delta 8 THC are prohibited controlled substances? The final action date is listed as April, end of this year. Yeah.
I read about it, and it was circulating on Twitter and stuff yesterday. X. But no, I don't have any deep thoughts. There was some theories that, hey, this could be getting things in order, cleaning up the house a little bit to lead the way into the rescheduling. Because I've often said, as soon as we get the DEA announcement of rescheduling, there's a hell of a lot of work to do, a lot of cleanup. We're going to need clarification from the Attorney General's office about how states' rights for adult use work without being contrary to federal law.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, even our rescheduling doesn't make sense for medical markets because Schedule 3 drugs are typically written by an MD or what are the nurse practitioners' prescription.
Sure.
But this is going to support the current dispensary setup. So anyway, a hell of a lot of work to do, but I digress. So I think that they need to clean up Delta 8 and Delta 9, et cetera. Everybody's obviously doing interstate commerce with those things. They're doing it in states like Texas. When we were down in Florida, there was beverages everywhere, which I enjoyed.
We'll talk more about beverages.
Yeah, it needs cleanup, streamlining to not be contrary to what is happening with actual THC business in states.
That makes sense. Perfect.
Wow, that was a long answer for not having an answer. Sorry.
I mean, you're just presenting what you know, which is good.
Yeah.
All right. Also, great point, William. You're right. Technically, it didn't come from like the POTUS handle. That is true. Or like the White House handle. So that is a difference. But I do think it's
But do you think Sleepy Joe is actually hitting the button, the send button?
I don't think he's hitting the send button. But I guess how much do you think it does matter between which account it's coming from?
That's a good point.
I think it matters somewhat, but I think it's still very, very monumental. It's still a positive sign that I mean, it's on his burner account. I don't think he has a burner account, but it's coming from him and from the VP in a coordinated way.
And it's not that, and that's never happened before. I mean, never in the history of histories. So a very positive step in the right direction. But once again, at this point, we have so much public sentiment, so much momentum, so many politicians saying all the right things, and we haven't heard anything to the contrary that the DEA announcement's not really coming, except from nut jobs like Sam and so on. So I think it's coming, but I don't want the White House or there was a message put out by some coalition in the House of liberal Democrats, a little bit of the squad put it out that all we have to do to get, federal reform in marijuana or cannabis is to vote all blue and have the Democrats take over the House and Senate and White House. And that just pissed off a lot of people because we've been waiting for the last few years already. So all I'm saying is I don't want anybody in the Democratic Party or the White House taking victory laps for the tweets and messaging and stuff they've been putting out without any real action.
That is true. Yeah, I think definitely that's another key thing in terms of dealing with politicians and sort of making your position and voice known is advocating for what you believe, but also you're right, not just accepting tweets and accepting mentions at the State of the Union, but really holding them to account to actually follow through. So I think that's another important aspect. Agree. But thanks, William, for, pointing that out because that is true. It's important. All right. Well, then I do want to get into 420, big event, talking through, implications, how it went, all that stuff as well. But first, I did want to tie in a little bit of the munchies trend with the restaurant side of things. I know we
Yeah.
have eats again, of course, so I feel like that ties in well. So I feel like the first thing is really, I feel like I saw much more advertising and promotion this year from giant established brands, mostly fast food. I will concede that, doing restaurant deals or just sort of celebrating the holiday in pretty open ways. I don't know. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts
I
on
think
that?
it's beautiful. It's just another step of normalization, if we want to call it that. And
Mhm.
remember, we talked so much about, I'm in the state of Texas where we don't have any kind of real legalization,
Mhm.
very limited medical. It's kind of ridiculous. But those are national commercials that you're talking about, Mackenzie.
Mhm.
And so national advertising, celebrating 420, coming out with specials. Wingstop happens to be the largest holding in our fund, Advisor Shares Restaurants ETF, ticker symbol EATS with a Z.
Perfect. Sure.
So yay, Wingstop, good job. I got one about a mile from my house. They have fine food for that is fast food. We can't call that fast casual, can we? Is that
I don't
fast
know.
food?
I think it's technically fast food. I feel like fast casual. I don't know. I think things are changing. So maybe the definitions are switching up. It's not purely fast food where it's like a drive through and go. I
Yeah,
think it
they
is fast food.
usually you have to you know
Have seating
get delivery no or carry out, but it's they don't have too many. The one by my house doesn't have a drive through or anything like that.
in
But
Texas. I'm surprised. Interesting.
well, it all depends on what kind of shop they're located in.
That's
It's
true.
not a standalone building. It's
Oh,
like a
fair enough.
strip mall.
Okay.
So anyway, Jack in the Box did some fine work for 420 day. Cheers. That's not surprising though.
Yeah.
They have a vested interest in legalization or federal reform for that late night menu at Jack. Yeah,
That is pretty solid. I do want to
they
check
do
and
brisk business at 2 a.m.
I believe it. I feel like I do want to see it. I haven't seen anything yet. I was trying to look and see if there was any impact or if you could see like a spike in sales or anything on, I think, again, the fast food side of things, probably ultimately. Haven't seen anything yet, even though we did see, again, we'll talk about it soon, but some
Yeah,
solid numbers from 420. But I think that's interesting also for the Wingstop aspect and the fact that the advertising is national. I wonder if it does hit people's attention in states where there's no programs really yet to sort of say, hey, it's a normal thing, it's a big brand talking about it, kind of the normalization that you're speaking to. So
definitely.
interesting.
I
We'll
think
see.
so. I think so. Continued momentum in the right direction and normalization. Yep.
That's true. All right, well then, hitting a little bit more on the restaurant theme, just kind of in general, just wanted to touch base on, I don't know, how prices are going. I know there's been a lot of discussion between California, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but generally I think, from the past inflation reports we've seen from last month, seems like they're still able to find ways to hike their pricing. I think I was looking and it was like eating out at a restaurant, costs had raised up 4.2%, which is again kind of funny, inadvertently tying into the cannabis theme, 420 technically. And then groceries had come up a little over 1%. So seeing kind of a widening there, which will be interesting to see if the
Yeah.
companies will be able to kind of continue to hike prices. And then in California, again, if anyone is tuned in, has raised their minimum wage for fast food chains. I think have over 60 locations over the whole country. So that does,
Unless
unless
you bake fresh bread
that
in your
Panera, I
location.
know,
It's the Panera carve out
Panera
because
loophole.
the owner or founder of Panera is a big Democratic donor to Gavin Newsom. So, hey, if you know who to grease, you can get
Yes.
a carve out of California laws. Good for you. But
Yes.
yeah, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know that they very specifically did it for fast food
Yes.
workers to have a minimum wage of $20. A couple businesses immediately closed up shop and shut down because that is so anti-business and it forced them into unprofitability immediately. But it's a great example of something that Mackenzie and I have talked about plenty of times before. There's some of the companies like Wingstop, like Chipotle, like Domino's, they do better jobs than average with their technology,
Mm-hmm.
with their streamlining, with their online ordering, very efficient. And if you have better technology, you can absorb a little bit of the um, employment hits of raising prices. But California is an excellent case study right now for if you're forced to pay this much more for employment, how much more do you need to raise prices? Can you make it profitable? Can it work? And if you're very labor intensive, instead of having that technology, yeah, you might have had to close up shop in California. But some people can absorb it a little bit better. And they're certainly raising prices. We are definitely in inflation still, no matter what Joe Biden says.
Sure.
I don't think he knows what the definition of inflation is. It's
Oh.
increasing prices. Doesn't
Sure.
matter if it's increasing at a slower rate sometimes. Um,
That is true.
but yeah, that's
Ultimately,
the case study. And we're leaning towards those companies that have streamlined technology, smooth operations. And yeah, people are still willing to pay up in general.
I think for sure, which is surprising. I will say, like you're saying, some of the larger companies are able to, lean into technology to find efficiencies there, but they've also been able to really hike their pricing just because I think branding is a certain aspect. You know what you're getting. People are very familiar with it. So I think the New York Post had put out something around like, a lot of them are raising them almost like 8%. For a lot of their prices, but they're able to find profitability in other ways. I know McDonald's recently, I think this year, hiked their franchisee fees and things like that. So I think some of the bigger ones are able to find and pull out some cash no matter what. But I think it's that middle area, maybe the ones that aren't publicly listed, who knows, that might have a harder time, that are over that 60 franchise threshold, but aren't large enough to really, throw their weight around and have that scale. So interesting there. Just wanted to check in kind of on the restaurant front because I think, again, it's an exciting theme and kind of a fun one as well to talk about.
Yep. Let's get to cannabis and 420
Yeah, I was
day.
going to say back on the cannabis train for sure. All right. Wanted to talk. I see the questions coming in as well. So thanks for putting those in. Keep putting them in. We'll get to them.
Yeah, keep coming in. We'll get to
in
them
a second
if
you have them.
Yep.
So 420 in general, how was it? Were you able? You weren't able to celebrate because you were in Texas, or were you able? I guess you can't say. Always find a way. But
well, I got a beverage fridge full of can. Hey, a message to everybody: be careful. I accidentally ordered a 12-pack of low boys when I meant to get high boys. I will drink them and give them to friends, but I definitely thought I was getting some high boys. I got some low boys by accident. It's user error here.
That happens.
So
better the other way, I guess.
No, I can celebrate a little bit. And 420 was huge. Mackenzie and Noah visited our sub-advisor Gerber Kawasaki out in was it actually Malibu or where were you?
It was in
Ventura?
Gosh, I'm so bad.
You're in Ventura.
It's by Venice Beach-ish area, but it's the
special 420 party. It looked like a good time. Had some music, had some products, but now it was huge that 420 was on a Saturday, and yes, even though some states have adult use, some states do not. Some states don't have virtually anything. I think it may have been the biggest 420 celebration day ever worldwide, especially in the U.S.
Yeah.
And we've seen the numbers from Headset, and Headset put out some excellent data. It shows, I even saw a video, 15-minute intervals of sales across the country spiking, and then the state by state numbers. So Headset does excellent work, puts out excellent data. And it was a big ass sales spike on 420. That's it.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I will say also something that was interesting. You were speaking about the beverages in general, that as a trend. I think their data had pulled out that beverages was one of the categories that was growing the most, which was super interesting. So good reminder also on Thursday, if anyone wants to learn more about sort of the beverages industry, what's going on there, we're going to have Adam Terry on from Cantrip to talk a little bit about, what they've been doing. You guys have seen him on Twitter as, is it the Weed Drinks guy? I love the name. It's simple and straight and to the point. So we'll talk a little bit more about that because I think beverages really have a lot of growth ahead of them potentially. I know flower still will remain king in a lot of different ways, but I think reaching the people who normally drink alcohol or just aren't as, I don't know what you'd call that, what's a sommelier but for cannabis, almost not as like interested in the notes and interested in all of the actual stuff, or
Yeah.
kind of have a good entry point for. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
think flower and is always gonna lead and be the most important, but again, normalization, middle-aged people, older people, all sorts of people that are using it for better sleep, for all sorts of medical, I don't know, not treatment, but different reasons. Are going to embrace the gummies and the drinks and all those CPG products quite a bit. So yeah, they have plenty of upside
yeah,
still.
that is true. Although, do they have any? I don't know, because a lot of them are derived through sort of the hemp, loophole, I guess, to some degree. Is
Well,
there
that's the only
any
way. That's the only way you can
to do it?
do interstate commerce. You can have it in states like I can have it shipped to my house here in Texas if
Yeah.
it's all under the hemp loophole. So when you have him on Thursday, Mackenzie,
Yes.
I would imagine that he is very in tune with
Yes.
the current potential revisions to the Farm Bill and hemp definitions because it will directly touch his business.
Yeah.
Another thing I really like about his business and everything going on is they're already in Total Wine. They're in, I have a beer store that has all sorts of imports and stuff like this real nearby, and they got them there. So you're not seeing that in the current cannabis model, whether it's medical dispensary or adult use in a dispensary. Those beverages, they're everywhere. They're
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 doing it.
moving forward with CPG and interstate commerce and being in regular retail stores, which is
That's
beautiful.
That's true. I guess maybe we'll talk about it with him a little bit later, but I do wonder the DEA, I know they're kind of starting to crack down a little bit on that versus moving ahead with THC, just normal THC. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. Too many. Okay, yeah, fair
Well,
enough.
once again, it's
Same thing.
it's sort of a it is. I don't know if we really call it a loophole, but it's a loophole as a result of the
I'm,
Farm Bill, and people blazed forward with it until someone's going to tell them no. But I think it needs better regulation and better definitions. I'm not against it. It just needs to be well defined um, and
standardized in
product
some way.
quality,
Just yeah.
testing, all that kind
Yeah.
of crap.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
That's fair. Okay. Quick question from Wucifer. Love the name. Any weight to the latest rumor about the DEA and the synthetic judgment at the end of this month?
Well, somebody already mentioned that a little bit. And one thing about the
Thanks for the
US
question.
government and deadlines is it, they're meant to be changed. So just because the government has a deadline of this month doesn't mean they can't change that deadline with a stroke of a pen.
Got it.
So they've been talking about fixing the farm bill and those hemp products for a long time and synthetics. It
Okay.
needs cleaning up.
Okay. All right. It's
But
one of those things that will get
now that
addressed.
today's the 23rd, Lucifer, I got my doubts.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, good question, Lucifer, and appreciate you throwing those down. All right, let me see. Ba-ba-ba. La, 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 la. All right, let's see. Yes, great point, Chris. A lot of great news coming out from 420, which is fantastic. And again, I think it's those new states, new markets. There's a lot of positive stuff. All right, question from...
And remember that 420 happens in every Q2 of every year, but this may
Yes.
be the biggest one ever, I think.
I
But
think
yeah,
ever so far makes sense because, again, new markets, beautiful day on a Saturday. I think it's just the new markets as well. I mean, that's got to be
will
the
be
majority.
like when rescheduling to 3 occurs. How impact
Here's a
recreational?
question.
Yeah, and I've said this. Great question. And
Thanks for the
all I'm
question.
going to say is, as soon as we get the DEA announcement, which is 90 something percent coming, me and everybody else believes, just a matter of when. We're going to get the DEA announcement, and we think it's going to be a big boost for these stocks. But we have got to have a lot of clarification. First of all, one analyst put out something about bifurcation. he raised the question, what if they have Schedule 3 for medical and not Schedule 3 for adult use? And I want to crap all over that. Sorry. Um,
Quash it, I think is a
Quash it.
there you go.
I believe, in my humble opinion, and I'm not an attorney,
Sure.
that it's ridiculous because we've always said that we've heard there's something called a Garland memo, and it just got nicknamed that by people like me because like the Cole memo.
Mhm.
But even if we get the Schedule 3, we have got to have clarification of supporting the medical cannabis dispensary system. And there's talk about I don't even know if they're going to leave medical up to the states, or that would, in effect, make medical legal nationwide in a way. But you're not going to have medical doctors writing prescriptions for it. They are definitely 100%, if they do the rescheduling, that's the if part. If they do the rescheduling, they are 100% sure going to support the medical dispensary system on a state by state basis that already exists. And state regulations are different state by state for that. Some are limited license states, some aren't. That's the simplest part of it. You also have to have attorney general clarification, which we heard is going to be coming. We heard it's already drafted. We
Mhm.
hear, we don't have facts of that. That it will support states' rights to allow those states that want to allow adult use, and hey, and there's states that don't want to have flower. You know, Florida didn't initially have flower. They could have caps and limits, all sorts of things, state by state basis, support states' rights, and not be contrary to federal law.
Beautifully said.
So there's going to be a lot of cleanup and guidelines and paperwork to come, even after we get the rescheduling announcement.
Perfectly said. All right, I'm seeing some good questions come in as well, which is awesome. First, hey Jacob, how are you doing? Great to see you. I'm glad you're wearing the hat. Glad you like it. All right, so let's see. From Cannibal, also great hat in this one. That's not ours, but I like the hat in the icon there. If Schedule 3 happens, do you think some of the MSO companies will start paying dividends?
Nope.
Really? Why? I feel like if you looked at tobacco, I know it's not exactly the same. It's very
Yeah.
different, but
Okay. No,
I don't know.
I'm being a little bit smart ass here, but no, great question,
Sure.
Cannibal. A decade from now, sure. But
Yep.
if you look at the profitability of tobacco companies, and tobacco companies also have all these things where they're not allowed to have TV commercials and magazine commercials. They're not allowed to have Joe Camel and all those things because cigarettes are bad. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to have some of that same stuff come down around cannabis, I'm sure, later. Um, Dividends, don't think they're free money. Okay, this is general education on what dividends are.
Sure.
If you have a stock trading at $100 a share and it pays a $5 dividend, the day they declare that dividend, the stock goes from $100 to $95 a share. It's just a distribution of money. The same thing as our ETF pays a dividend. It ain't free money. The price goes down by equal amount that same day. ETFs are sometimes forced to, if they have income. We get a lot of income from all the money we have in money market and earning interest from our swap collateral.
Hmm.
We have to pay dividends. Cannabis companies in the US, for the most part, I would expect them to take extra cash and reinvest it in growth in their business.
Yeah.
So when you have fast growth, smaller cap companies, they are investing in their business and growing. You mainly get dividends out of really old school blue chip companies, and that can be a good use of their cash is to distribute it to shareholders.
But I think
That's
that
a very long answer, but
that's a great way to say it in terms of like it's a step towards them being able to operate as a normal company. So again, you could see dividends. Again, not probably if we get Schedule 3 tomorrow or yesterday or whatever, any recently, that's more likely to go into building the businesses, finding that growth, really turning on that growth hose. But in the longer term, as again
long
they
term, yeah.
continue to operate like not legacy, I mean, kind of legacy businesses in some ways. Legacy, not in legacy market, but just sort of, existing large companies that they could do dividends. And again, it's not going to be across the board. Maybe some will choose to do it, some won't. And that's one of the things. Let me see.
More
All right.
questions.
More questions. All right, moving on. Lucifer again. Loving it. Okay. Dan, if Cureleaf decides to list on another exchange, say Europe or Canada, not sure if they could do it with their new acquisition, does that have any effect on the ETF?
Yeah, well, be clear that they're already listed on the TSX in Canada, which is the major exchange, the senior exchange in Canada. And that move allowed us to invest directly in Curaleaf stock rather than using 100% total return swaps. So we own some of it directly as traded on the TSX, and we also own additional amounts of it via total return swap still because we own so darn much Curaleaf because we love Curaleaf. There's talk about them because they have so much European exposure now, and they're looking to grow in Europe about possibly listing on a European exchange. I think that would be wonderful, such as the Frankfurt, for instance, or the London. It will allow additional institutional investment. It'll allow, European investment easier. Some Europeans can invest in that stock already, but they're buying it kind of like individuals buy it in the US. It's traded OTC, it's listed in Canada, etc. Does it directly affect how we invest in it in our fund? No. But helpful? Yes. But just because Europe and access to stocks in Europe is different than it is in North America, it doesn't make, there's no reason for a stock to be listed on, 6 different exchanges. That doesn't accomplish anything. But
Yeah.
they're listed in Canada. We really want them to get listed on NYSE or NASDAQ one of these days. But listing in Europe would be maybe a neat thing.
Yeah.
Earth changing? No, but it could help.
Yeah, just another pathway to get money.
More questions. More questions.
All right. Here we go.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a sideline because it's cannabis related. Village Farms, the largest holding in YOLO besides MSOs, is up 13.22% right now.
Nice. All right.
Okay,
is the Canadian side having a good day today? I know we were green.
Well, Canopy is up 12.1%. Tilray's up 5.5%.
Okay.
Sundial's up 6.6%. Yeah, the Canadians are having a day, which is nice.
Good one to have in the second top holding, though, which is great. Yeah. All right. Yep. No problem. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it. All right. So you mentioned why the ETF gets dividends a little bit. Can you talk just a little more ETF education kind of on how they get paid out? What's going on there? Also, thanks for the question.
We have one fund, the AADR fund, Dorsey Wright. It's an international stock fund. And it can pay out quarterly dividends because sometimes those types of stocks and ADRs pay a little bit more dividend income. That's income to the fund, and then the fund have to distribute it. All of our funds, otherwise, including the cannabis funds, are set up for, no, they can pay quarterly too. They just haven't in a long time. But at calendar year end, all the funds can pay out dividends or long-term capital gains or short-term capital gains. And generally, you want an ETF to be managed by the portfolio manager and the team to try to minimize capital gains distributions. Because once again, it ain't free money. And you invest $10,000 into a fund in cannabis over the last 3 years, it went down. Well, the value of your investment goes down. You don't want to get a distribution at the end of the year and have to pay taxes on it. That's no fun. Or even if it appreciates in value, you don't want to pay taxes just on get a distribution at the end of the year and have to pay taxes on that distribution, even if you're leaving your money sitting there still. So let me give you the example of the end of the year. On our website, you can look at dates. There is, we work with our fund accounting team at BNY Mellon. They do calculations, and we don't want to pay distributions, but if the fund has a bunch of income, if it earned dividends, in the case of cannabis funds, if we earned a whole bunch of interest on our collateral, and those exceed the expenses, we will be forced to pay a distribution. We will declare it one day, and then there is a X date. So if we're going to pay $1 dividend, price of the fund goes down $1 that same day. That's on X date. The fund trades without the dividend, and then there's a pay date, and it will actually just show up in your brokerage account. It's a way. This is the way all mutual funds and ETF works, by the way. And then, depending on who your brokerage firm is, you may have had an election inside of your brokerage firm to check a box or something online where they can reinvest it for you. They can reinvest that distribution right back into the fund. But that depends on your brokerage firm.
Perfect education. We got a mix of things. Got some insight, education, the whole deal. All right, last few questions. One is a solid one again from Lucifer. That'll be the real sign if anything happens. If Pelosi adds MSOS to her account.
She ain't going to call me.
All right, well, who knows? I guess Unusual Whales probably would report on it, I would imagine. Who knows?
Yeah, that would come out two ways. If it was such a huge investment that it showed up in filings, like people can look on their Bloomberg machine and see which family offices and hedge funds own a whole bunch of our fund, which money market makers and Merrill Lynch as a firm, people like that.
Yes.
And then, yes, when it comes to our Congress people, there's places like Unusual Whales and everything else, but they get it out of public disclosures. So Congress people typically have to do filings. It'll be after the fact. So you're not going to see it the next day or anything. But when you're going to see it when Nancy or her handlers do their filings.
It's still a sign, I think, to some way, but that's good. That's a very reasonable response to a goofy, fun question, but who knows? Okay, final thing from Jacob. Recapping. How was Mean Jane again at Benzinga? A lot of fun. Overall.
Fantastic.
Great to see you.
I loved it. Well, she was hanging out with us the most part.
Sure.
And Noah, to his credit, good job, Noah, and Todd Harrison kind of teamed up and helped plan getting Jungle Java down there.
Yes.
But no, I loved how much she enjoyed it. She was very enthusiastic. And we're talking about, if you want to call them Canna celebrities, as you said, Jake.
Yeah.
No, she got to meet Boris. She got to meet Jason Wild. She got to meet who did she? She met everybody.
Everyone, yeah.
Yeah, and we're pulling people aside, say, "Hey,
do you know Jane? It's Jane in real life. Yeah, it's true. So that was super fun seeing her for sure. Zachary, seeing all these people that I think you interact with online and seeing them in person is just kind of a lot of fun and a good reminder of kind of one of the reasons you're in the space and why it's such a great kind of community as well. So
yeah, that was good.
Is great. Well, so speaking
something.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to give somebody I had a general vibe, general thoughts about 420 is the fact that, hey, 420 came and went. We still don't have SAFE. We still don't have the rescheduling.
True.
And virtually every company was represented at Benzinga. And there's a couple companies that weren't officially on the agenda, but they were in Florida anyway, and I sat down with a couple companies that weren't part of the Benzinga conference. But everybody has a very similar attitude right now that we're not depressed because we don't have our federal reform yet, because everybody is pretty positive that it's coming. Pretty positive. Ain't no guarantees. These things are still very high risk, very volatile. We might be having the same conversation at the end of the year. I don't know. But everybody at Benzinga seems pretty upbeat, positive, especially considering that 420 is here and we still don't have official things done in Washington.
I think that's true, but it also comes down to what you've said a lot of, we haven't had good news yet, but we also haven't had any bad news. If anything, we've had minor good news for, again, Florida getting on the ballot, like all of those different things kind of chipping away forward, which is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, hey, and People go crazy looking at ups and there's a red day. People on the X get all fired up and stuff about it. But
Sure.
and when we say this, we always realize how painful the last 3 years were. Don't
Yes.
get me wrong; they're
Been in there
painfully
too.
painful for me personally, and because I'm invested in my own funds and I own options on our funds. But no, just step back, look at the year-to-date performance. I was on a video somewhere saying that I predicted that cannabis was going to be one of the top performing sectors or industries in this calendar year, and so far it is.
And we haven't even
Compare
seen anything
cannabis
yet,
to
which is
other
great.
industries year to
Yeah.
date, and chill out, everybody, because I think we still have news coming, and things still seem positive.
Yeah, that's true. I do think, again, just sort of seeing the general market, a lot of people are looking for like, where's growth? Everything kind of seems a little bit crazy. Cannabis does seem like one of the, not only because that's not true, but a solid area where there is a very clear path, I think, towards growth and towards growth ultimately. So, all right. Well, good stuff. Thanks, Dan, for taking the time. Appreciate it as always. Good reminder for anybody who's out there. We are going to have Todd Harrison on, speaking of him, tomorrow to talk through a little bit more about what's going on in cannabis. So as always, you guys can ask questions or throw comments his way as well. Best way to kind of stay tuned and get our alerts, reminders, any information, definitely recommend subscribing, following us. I don't know, whatever. Following us so you don't get lost in the shuffle and we show up on your timeline. X is a great spot. I think YouTube is great as well for when we're going live on these. And of course, Instagram's in there as well. I see Shroom Sleep on there. So, hey, Shroom Sleep, special call out on Instagram. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate it. And we will catch you tomorrow. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Dan.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at advisorshares.com.